Caitlin Clark has not said a word publicly, she has not played a game in weeks, and yet she remains the single most disruptive force in the WNBA ecosystem right now. That is the paradox defining this moment. While the league drifts through the quiet stretch of the calendar, Clark's name continues to dominate conversations about money, power, labor, and identity in women's basketball. Her absence from the spotlight has not slowed the noise. If anything, it has amplified it, because the league is now arguing about her impact without her even being present. What changed was not a highlight or a stat line, but a sentence. When Sophie Cunningham openly declared that denying Clark as the face of the league was flatly dishonest, it detonated an argument the WNBA has been circling for months but refusing to name directly. Cunningham did not invent the tension. She exposed it. Her comments forced players, fans, and executives to confront an uncomfortable reality. The league's recent explosion in attention, merchandise sales, and national relevance is inseparable from Clark's arrival, and pretending otherwise no longer holds up under scrutiny. This matters now because the WNBA is simultaneously negotiating its economic future. With collective bargaining talks intensifying and the possibility of a work stoppage looming, every new revenue stream becomes political. Every endorsement deal, television rating, sold-out arena, and viral clip feeds directly into the question players are asking behind closed doors. If the money is clearly here, why does the system still feel built for scarcity? Clark has become the symbol of that contradiction, not because she asked to be, but because her market value is impossible to ignore. The timing could not be more volatile. While Clark has kept a low public profile during the holidays, reportedly training and resetting away from cameras, she has still been active at the highest levels of basketball, including recent involvement with USA basketball training environments. Even when she steps back, the machinery around her does not stop. Her brand continues to operate independently of her visibility, which is precisely what separates star players from economic engines. That distinction is now at the center of the league's internal debate. Nothing illustrates this better than the sudden frenzy around her trading card releases. Panini's Caitlin Clark Chronicle collection did not just sell well. It sold out almost immediately at major retailers at a price point that signals investment, not novelty. Prominent sports voices openly advised fans to keep the product sealed, framing it as a long-term asset rather than memorabilia. That framing matters. It places Clark in a category reserved for athletes whose value transcends seasons and contracts, and it raises an unavoidable question about how that value flows back to the players themselves. This is where the tension sharpens. The WNBA has always emphasized collective growth and parity, and veteran players have spent years laying the groundwork for the league's current momentum. Clark did not build the foundation, but she has accelerated the expansion at a pace no individual player ever has. That creates an emotional and economic friction point. The league is benefiting from her gravity, but the compensation structure still reflects an earlier era, one that assumed no single player could move the market this dramatically. The argument is no longer about whether Caitlin Clark is popular or talented. It is about what happens when one player's presence reframes the league's financial ceiling during a moment of labor negotiation. Some see her as leverage, others as a complication, and many as both at once. Even criticism of her, whether fair or flawed, only increases engagement and reinforces her centrality. Every debate circles back to her because she has become the reference point for value in the modern WNBA. That is why this story cannot be dismissed as internet noise or fan exaggeration. It sits at the intersection of star power, labor rights, and institutional readiness. The league is being pulled forward faster than its systems were designed to move, and Caitlin Clark is the force doing the pulling, whether she intends to or not. The unresolved question is not whether the WNBA can grow, but whether it can evolve quickly enough to fairly account for the kind of transformative impact it is now experiencing. Once the emotion is stripped away, what remains is a structural problem the WNBA has never had to confront at this scale. Caitlin Clark is not simply outperforming her rookie contract or exceeding expectations. She is exposing the limitations of a league economic model built for collective modest growth rather than individual market disruption. The current system assumes that no single player can dramatically outpace the league's overall revenue curve. Clark has already done exactly that, and the league now has to decide whether it adapts or resists. From a tactical standpoint, Clark's value is unusually portable. Her impact is not limited to one franchise, one style of play, or one demographic. She draws casual fans, converts college viewers into professional viewers, and commands national media attention in a way that very few athletes in any sport can sustain. That kind of pull changes scheduling priorities, broadcast negotiations, and even how games are officiated and marketed. The league does not just benefit from her presence on the floor, it benefits from the anticipation of her appearances, the debate around her performance, and the visibility that follows every discussion involving her name. Psychologically, this creates a delicate environment inside locker rooms and across the league. Veteran players are simultaneously proud of the league's growth and uneasy about how abruptly the spotlight has shifted. Many of them spent years carrying the league through low visibility and low pay, only to see a new era arrive almost overnight. That does not invalidate Clark's impact, but it does complicate how players emotionally process fairness, recognition, and reward. When Sophie Cunningham spoke so bluntly, she was not just defending a teammate or a peer. She was reacting to a collective anxiety about acknowledgement and truth in a league that has often had to fight for both. Historically, leagues face this inflection point when a transcendent figure arrives before the business infrastructure is ready. The NBA experienced it with Michael Jordan before revenue sharing fully matured. The WNBA has never had a Jordan-level commercial accelerant arrive during an active labor transition. Previous stars elevated the league incrementally. Clark is compressing years of growth into a single cycle. That compression is why tensions feel sharper and stakes feel higher. The system is being asked to stretch faster than it ever has before. The trading card phenomenon is not a side story. It is evidence. When a player's collectibles are treated as long-term investments rather than fan souvenirs, it signals a belief in sustained cultural relevance. That belief drives sponsor confidence, media leverage, and future broadcast value. Yet under current structures, much of that downstream value does not flow proportionally back to players. The disconnect between visible revenue generation and cap compensation is no longer theoretical. It is measurable, public, and increasingly difficult to justify. League-wide, this moment forces hard decisions about what equity actually means. Is fairness achieved by strict parity, or by acknowledging that different players generate different economic realities? The WNBA has long prioritized balance to protect competitive integrity, but balance does not require blindness to value. If the league cannot articulate how transformational stars fit into its compensation philosophy, it risks alienating both its labor force and its audience. Fans intuitively understand value, and they are less willing than ever to accept explanations that feel disconnected from reality. The long-term consequences hinge on how this moment is handled. A new collective bargaining agreement that meaningfully reflects revenue growth could stabilize the league for a generation. Mishandling it could fracture trust just as public interest peaks. Clark herself does not need to say anything for her influence to be felt. Her existence as a revenue driver is already shaping negotiations, expectations, and public pressure. That is power, even when it is unspoken. Ultimately, Caitlin Clark represents more than a generational talent. She represents a stress test for the WNBA's maturity as a professional league. The question is no longer whether women's basketball deserves investment. That argument has been won. The question now is whether the league can evolve fast enough to reward value honestly, protect its players collectively, and still preserve the competitive and cultural integrity that made this moment possible. How the WNBA answers that will define not just Clark's era, but the league's future long after the noise fades.